What's up, guys? Today's lesson is on a frog jellyfish, the Portuguese man of war. Why would you say such a thing? Give me like 30 seconds, it'll make sense. The Portuguese man of war's scientific name is Physalia physalis. The genus and species clearly come from the same thing. What they derive from is the Greek word physalis, meaning bubble or bladder due to its unique appearance. Its common name man of war comes from a type of sailing worship in history called the man of war, and the Portuguese part of its name comes from its supposed resemblance to the Portuguese's version of the ship at full sail called the caravel. Now, the reason why I called it a frog jellyfish has to do with this taxonomic class. Most people call it a jellyfish, but the Portuguese man of war belongs to the class Hadrozoa, while true jellyfish belong to the class Scyphozoa. Both classes fall under the phylum Cnidaria though, whose distinguishing features include specialized cells called cnidocytes, something I'll talk about later. The Portuguese man of war's floating body is called the pneumatophore, and it ranges from just 6 inches to a foot long. Its tentacles underwater, however, can grow up to 165 feet, though often averaging much shorter at around 30 feet. Wow! The length isn't to scale here. If I drew it perfectly accurate, it would have been at least 30 times longer than the pneumatophore. Not happening. Just imagine it's accurate. At the same time, it's incredibly light because it's full of gas, letting it float on water. This means as a result, it usually weighs a pound or less. Another name the Portuguese man of war has is the blue bottle. This comes from the color of its pneumatophore, being purple-blue yet translucent. That means it's kind of see-through. The tentacles have the same color too, and the crest-like thing on top acts as a sail and is tipped with pink. But after stranding, it loses its color pretty quickly, becoming translucent with only a bit of purple left when washed ashore. As for the truth about the Portuguese man of war, it's actually a colony of individually specialized organisms called zooids. Whoa, that's crazy. Now, there are 4 primary types of zooids that work together as one. There's the pneumatophore, which keeps it afloat, the dactylozoids, which are the tentacles acting as defense, gastrozoids, which handle digestion, and gonozoids, which produce gametes for reproduction. These specializations make the Portuguese man of war super efficient and effective at capturing prey and defending against predators. Lining the tentacles are the tiny cnidocytes, which are the stinging cells also seen in true jellyfish. Inside the cnidocytes are nematocysts, the weapons of the stinging cells. When the tentacles come in contact with any prey or predator, the nematocysts release an incredibly potent toxin capable of paralyzing or just straight up killing them. What's important to know is that it can still sting after it's dead, so never touch one even if it's washed ashore. Deaths from its sting are extremely rare, but, and it might just be me, I think excruciating pain is pretty bad, so I'd probably avoid that. To move around, the Portuguese man of war completely relies on the winds and waves, so it doesn't travel very fast or at all. It'll move faster if there's super strong winds, often washing ashore after big storms, but usually it moves less than 2.5 miles per hour. Funnily enough, the only control it has over its movement is that the pneumatophore is angled to be left-handed or right-handed, making it drift in opposite directions in the wind. The Portuguese man of war can be found in tropical warm waters all over the world, including the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, and the Caribbean and Sargasso Sea. Sometimes it can be seen washed up on the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Florida shores due to strong winds or storms. Now, based on what you've learned so far, it shouldn't be hard to figure out what habitat it generally lives in. If it is, well, maybe it's time to work on those critical thinking skills. Dummy. The Portuguese man of war doesn't have a specific habitat it prefers, except maybe the open ocean, if that counts as a specific habitat, since all it does is float on the water. Not coral reefs, not mangrove islands, not kelp forests, nothing. And it essentially has no control of where it goes either. Its fate is completely in the hands of the winds and waves. Oh, it's on the beach? Must have been the wind. The diet of the Portuguese man of war usually consists of small fish, small crustaceans, and plankton. However, nearly 70% to 90% of its prey is just fish. Its actual hunting process is pretty simple. With its tentacles, it captures prey and releases its venom, paralyzing it or killing it. Then, the tentacles pull it up to the main body, where the gastrozoids, which have individual mouths, secrete enzymes to break it down. Once everything's been digested, anything that wasn't digestible is pushed out through the mouths, and the food is absorbed into the body and circulated to all zooids in the colony. The Portuguese man of war performs both sexual and asexual reproduction. First off, it's dioecious, meaning a colony is either male or female. It's basically how it is in most animal species. Each one's specific gonozoids are made of gonophores that produce sperm or eggs. And the breeding season apparently occurs during the fall, where groups of Portuguese man of wars release their gametes into the open water for fertilization. Eventually, the fertilized egg develops into a free-swimming larva called a planula and engages in budding, a form of asexual reproduction. In this process, The planula buds off new zooids as it grows. You can think of it as like budding amethyst in Minecraft, where amethyst clusters grow from it, but start off as amethyst buds. Over time, the original individual will repeatedly divide, making more and more zooids until the mature colony is fully formed. What comes out first though is the nematophore and a single early feeding zooid called a protozoid. The digestive zooids and tentacle zooids are added later on, and the growing nematophore will soon become buoyant enough to carry the young colony on the water. According to the IUCN Red List, the Portuguese man of war is classified as a not evaluated species. This may be because, from what we know, it's nowhere close to being endangered, nor faces any major threat to the species as a whole, and its numbers are very stable across warm ocean waters everywhere. Now, despite its venomous tentacles, the Portuguese man of war is a big part of the marine ecosystem. Its tentacles actually act as food for many species of fish and other organisms that have adapted to the toxin. One of them is the blue dragon, a popular sea slug that eats the tentacles and stores the stinging cells into its own body. The inherent floating nature of the nematophore and tentacles also provides a habitat for some smaller sea creatures, like unironically, the man of war fish, which actually lives within the tentacles. Supposedly, there are about 150 million jellyfish stings per year, and the Portuguese man of war is responsible for a good number of them. Yes, it's not a jellyfish, but it's easier for people to understand it as jellyfish stings instead of cnidarian stings. But whatever. Here's some quick first aid tips if you or someone is stung by one. These can be done before a professional arrives. First of all, do not rub the stung area or let any tentacles roll over any unaffected skin, as this will intensify the venom's effect or increase affected surface area. It's already going to hurt a lot. Don't make it worse. Next, carefully remove any tentacles with tweezers or gloves to prevent any more venom seeping in. If there aren't any tweezers or gloves, your fingers might be enough to protect you, but after you're done removing the tentacles, your fingers could have hundreds or thousands of unfired nematocysts, so your fingers will also need to be treated using the following tips. Once everything visible has been removed, flush the area with seawater specifically to remove any leftover unfired nematocysts. Ideally, this should be done with a syringe to flush it with a powerful stream of seawater, but doing it in some way is better than not doing it at all. And do not use fresh water. That'll cause the unfired nematocysts to fire, causing more pain. Applying vinegar is controversial, but might be helpful. Several studies have seen massive venom release after pouring vinegar on certain jellyfish stings, but other sources say it can stabilize any unfired nematocysts for the Portuguese man of war. It doesn't do anything for venom already inside the body though. It's just to prevent any more venom, so use this tip at your will. I'm not responsible for anything unless something good happens. But afterwards, apply heat to the affected area. This does two things. It can help mask the pain and help with thermolysis to denature the toxins. Denaturing is basically a process that changes the natural molecular structure of a protein or DNA. It's what happens when you cook an egg and turn it from clear to white. To do so, immerse the area in hot water for 30 to 90 minutes. A good rule of thumb for the right water temperature is to use the hottest water you can tolerate without burning. Repeat this as necessary. And finally, just wait for a professional medical evaluation to be done and continue monitoring yourself or the victim. So to put everything simply, first, don't rub the sting or move tentacles over the skin. Then remove tentacles with tweezers, gloves, or fingers as a last resort. If fingers are used, the following must be done too. Flush the affected area with seawater, ideally with a syringe, and not with fresh water. That's important. Next, apply vinegar at your own risk. Then apply heat to the area using hot water for 30 to 90 minutes. Then finally, wait for a medical evaluation and monitor the victim. But anyway, that's about it for today's lesson. Subscribe for more fish facts, and I'll see you next time.